Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this is something we don't see too often in the UK, a brand new model from Honda, the ZR-V. Now I know what you're thinking, oh my god, another SUV here in the UK, but surprisingly Honda has been absent from the family SUV segment. Now yes, they have got the CR-V, but that is considered a large SUV, and then they've got the HR-V, which is more of a baby SUV slash crossover. So the ZR-V sits right in the middle of them, and it is a highly competitive segment that the ZR-V is taking on, with established brands like Nissan with the Qashqai, Kia with the Sportage. But the fact is, it's actually a very wide and diverse segment, because on the budget side we got MG with the HS, but on the premium side we got brands like BMW and Audi with the X1 and Q3. So I'm here on the UK launch of the new ZR-V from Honda, and well, this is being sold as kind of a sporty Civic type SUV on stilts. So I've taken this ZR-V for a drive and I'm going to let you know what it's all about. Now, if you want your family SUV to be in any way competitive, it's got to stand out. I mean, it's competing against the likes of Peugeot, Hyundai and Kia with the 3008, the Tucson and the Sportage, because they look like concept cars on the road. So when it comes to the ZR-V styling, well, I think it's a bit of a handsome beast, but I wouldn't say it was the best looking in class. Now at the front, we can see with the headlights, there is a family resemblance with the Honda Civic, but I do like the back end of the ZR-V. I think it actually has a very distinctive rear, and the proportions seem just right, especially as Honda are looking at the ZR-V as more of a kind of sporty family SUV rather than one that's kind of big and comfortable. But let me know what you think of the ZR-V's styling in the comments section below. But I will mention I love this blue metallic paint. I will put the name at the bottom of the screen for you, or perhaps above my head. I think it actually is very distinctive with that lovely sporty grille and 18-inch alloy wheels, because this is the sport trim after all. And those alloy wheels do kind of change design a little bit depending on which spec level you go for. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments section below. And on that note, I think it's time we have a little look at the interior of the... Sat in the front of the new ZR-V, you are greeted by a very comfortable, spacious and well-equipped interior with very strong Honda Civic vibes to it, which is no bad thing because I really do like the Civic's interior. Now, because this is a family SUV, getting in and out of the ZR-V is really easy because of that raised seating position. I believe it's about 30mm higher than what you experience in the Civic. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, then this is definitely one car to look at. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat, you find that the seats themselves are very comfortable. They do hold a big bear like me in place, and there is a great deal of adjustment, as well as the steering, where I got both rake and reach adjustment. So getting the perfect driving position is easy. And then when it comes to interior quality, I'd actually say it's a little bit better in here than it is in the Civic. We have got leather here on the dash, as well as soft plastics on top of the dash and on top of the doors as well, with leather trim on the door panels and really squidgy leather just behind the door handles as well. So I really do like that. And then on the center console, we've got leather here so you can rest your knee against on a long journey. So that's actually something I do like. But yeah, when it comes to hard scratchy plastics, of course, you do find them a little bit lower down, but they are of a decent quality and should stand the test of time. Cubby spaces in the ZR-V are not too bad, but they are quite quirky. Now, the door pockets are of an okay size. They got this kind of double bottle shape to them, but they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit, but you could get to perhaps medium-sized bottles in there. Now, on the center console up front, we have got a tray area with your wireless charging and a 12-volt socket. Just behind there, we've got two cup holders. Now, they're not rubber lined, but we have got a couple of plastic grippers to hold your cup or bottle in place. Now, kind of behind and underneath on the center console, we have got a little tray area which is rubber lined, but we've also got a USB-C and USB-A charging inputs here. So you can have two phones lying side by side next to each other charging, but it's the one on the right hand side that does your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And you can either have that tethered or wireless. Then just behind there, we have got your center armrest. And that is of a decent size, and again it is rubber lined, so loose items shouldn't really make much noise when rolling around in there. And then finally we have got the glove box, which is of an okay size. Is a little bit small, I would say, compared to some of its rivals, and again it's not lined with any fabric or rubber, so loose items will make a bit of noise in there, so that's just something to be aware of. So yeah, when it comes to cubby spaces here in the ZR-V, they are okay, but some of their rivals are a little bit more spacious compared to this car. Now, when it comes to the button layout here in the ZR-V, it is actually pretty ergonomic, and I've had no issues when I've gone on the drive in the ZR-V. So we've got our 9-inch touchscreen, which is set up high on the dash, just like in the Civic. But again, just like the Civic, I wish it was just turned a little bit towards myself, so it kind of had a more driver-focused seating position. However, just like the Honda Civic, it is the new version of the infotainment system. So if you have had Hondas over the last couple of years, you will feel quite at home with it, but it is quicker than before, because as we all know, Honda infotainment systems have always been a little bit of an Achilles heel compared to rivals. But as I mentioned, you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. With CarPlay, you've got it both tethered and wireless. And yeah, the system has worked really well when I've actually driven the ZR-V today, because I have actually done my filming the other way around. I've already driven the ZR-V. I'm just doing the interior and everything afterwards. Now, just below there, we have got your dual zone climate control, just like in the Civic and also in like the Jazz. Again, it's nicely laid out, and I do like the feeling and the tactility of the buttons there. Then on the center console, we have got your gear select here on top, and then we have got things like your drive mode select. We've actually got hill descent control as well, considering that this is front wheel drive, and we've got your electric handbrake and your auto hold. Now, on the steering wheel on the left hand side, we've got things like your media and communication controls, and it operates things on the driver data display. And on the right hand side, we've got things like your radar guided cruise control, but also the right hand side of the driver data display. And one thing I do like is we have got some flappy paddles here on the back of the steering wheel. Now, they adjust the regen system of this hybrid ZR-V. They're not for changing gear. And then when it comes to things like the infotainment screen, it is actually nice and high up. And I do like the fact as well that fingers don't really smudge on here like they do on other systems. So that is a nice perk. And then in front of the steering wheel, we have got a digital driver's display, and it is, yeah, lovely and clear. You can go through the various menus, and yes, at some point you can have quite a lot of information displayed to you at once, but after a couple of minutes of driving, you do get used to it. So yeah, when it comes to the kind of layouts and everything here in the ZR-V, it feels really nice in here, and it does actually look like Honda have thought about, you know, how they wanted the interior of the ZR-V to be, and again, taking kind of a big base of that from the new Civic. So yeah, being sat here in the front of the ZR-V, it's a nice, comfortable, spacious place to be, and I could easily imagine myself doing a long journey in the ZR-V and coming out the other end feeling nice and comfortable. But that's enough of sitting in the front here of the ZR-V. Let's see what it's like in the back. Sat in the back of the ZR-V, it's actually very comfortable and spacious back here. I could easily imagine myself doing a medium to even long journey. Now that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide. And as you can see, I've got a good amount of knee room, and headroom is not too bad either. However, I would say that if you are 6 foot tall, you might find your head just rubbing against the roof lining, so just be aware of that. But I do like the fact that I can stretch out my feet underneath the driver's seat, so I can kind of, yeah, just stretch out a little bit in the back here. Now, you could easily get 2 adults in the back of the ZR-V. I probably wouldn't recommend 3, but you could easily get 3 kids back here, and also affix 2 child seats because, well, there's actually no covers on them, so it's very easy to affix a child seat, so I do like that. But yeah, you could get 3 kids back here because there's actually no transmission tunnel here and almost a completely flat floor, so that is actually really handy. Now, cubby spaces are not too bad back here either. We got some decent sized door pockets, again not lined with any fabric. We got our aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats. We have, oh, if I can grab it, there we go. Got an armrest with a couple of extra cup holders, which is very handy as well. Now, it's not devoid of features either. We have got a couple of USB-C charging inputs, and actually, no, that's about it. But I do like the fact that we have got LED lights back here. But one big bonus is that the windows are really nice and big. They are tinted on this sport model. Unfortunately, they only open about 90% of the way down, but I can still rest my arm here on the window edge, so I do like that. And I also like the fact that it is soft plastic as well as leather on the door panel as well. So yeah, when it comes to the rear seats in the ZR-V, it's actually really comfortable and spacious back here, but probably not for taller adults. And one other thing I do like is actually the side here where the seatbelt leans against is also leather as well, so that actually gives that air of quality sitting in the back of the ZR-V. But yeah, I'm actually really happy back here, and I would say it's now time to look at that boot. Opening the boot on the ZR-V presents you with 380 litres of space, which in this segment isn't really the most impressive. In fact, it kind of lags behind the likes of the Skoda Karoq. But when you got the boot open, you have got a nice wide square load area. The boot lip is completely flat and not too high off the ground, so you could get dogs into the back of the ZR-V, or perhaps, you know, some large bulky items. Now, on this particular car, we have got a boot liner here. I will try and find out the price of it and put it at the bottom of the screen for you. But when it comes to features, well, we have got a few, so that is a blessing. So we have got some sturdy tethering hooks. They are tucked underneath here. We've got a 12-volt socket and a couple of these little shopping hooks as well, which are very convenient to stop your shopping rolling around all over the place. And just underneath the boot floor, we got a little bit of additional space here if you want to hide anything underneath the boot floor. What I like as well is that we have got a nice solid parcel shelf. However, you can't put it underneath the boot floor, which is a bit disappointing. And something I do like as well is that when you do put the seats down on the ZR-V, in typical Honda fashion, they go completely flat. So you can get large bulky items into the back of the ZR-V, and it's not going to be too much of an effort to kind of roll it up the back of the seats because it is completely flat. So I do like that feature. But yeah, at a 380 litres, it's just not really the most competitive in its class. But just like Honda have said, it's not really a retirement type of customer car. This is after young families that want something a little bit different and a bit sporty for their family. But yeah, the boot space itself, like I said, it's nice and wide, but it's not as big compared to rivals. And on that note, I think it's time we take the ZR-V for a drive and see what it's like. So once you start driving in the ZR-V, first impressions are actually really positive. It does feel like a Honda Civic, but you sit a little bit higher. So as a result, you've got a really excellent driving position, and when it comes to visibility, it's really impressive as well. Just like the Civic, we've got this kind of flat plane view in terms of kind of what you can see out the front of the ZR-V, and it is actually really impressive. The A-pillars are not too thick either, and I've not found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are actually being pulled back and they're on the doors just like the Civic, and they're of a decent size and shape, and I have got blind spot monitoring. Now if I look over my shoulder, I do find I have got quite a thick C-pillar, so it does create a bit of a blind spot, but I have got blind spot monitoring. And then rear visibility is actually really good. There is a decent size and decent view looking out the back of the ZR-V, so I'm actually really impressed by it. But yeah, first impressions once you get driving, it's nice and comfortable, it's easy to drive, and it does feel like a Honda Civic, but you sit a bit higher. So that's a very good first impression. Now there are 3 trim levels to choose from in the ZR-V range. There is the Elegance, the Sport, and the top of the range Advance, which is what I'm driving here. Now Honda won't like me calling the Elegance the entry level model because, Well, it's jam-packed full of kit. In fact, I'm going to put on the screen now just what those trim levels come with as standard. Now, Honda do predict that the Advance is going to be the best seller, taking 50% of orders, and they're aiming at retail customers. Now, that's a little bit of a change, because when I went on the Honda Civic launch last year, they predicted the Sport was going to be the best seller, but actually going to a couple of dealerships, it turns out that the Advance is the one that everyone's going for. They want all the extra kit and essentially all the extra comfort and convenience. And you know what? Fair play to them. And when it comes to the Advance, I mean, yeah, I have got some real nice creature comforts in here. I've got a sunroof, I've got the Bose sound system, full leather seats that are heated as well. But things like wireless charging and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, I mean, you can get that on the Sport. So basically it comes down to really what you want in terms of as standard. I'd probably recommend going for the Sport, because it will just be that nice sweet spot. You'll have all the sporty exterior looks to the car, you'll get the half leather, half fabric seats, but you'll get all the kit you'll want as standard. Again, going back to that slide I showed you earlier. But I'm going to be honest, I mean, there's quite a narrow margin in the price bracket between the Elegance and the Advance. So in terms of kind of residue values, if you're looking to buy the ZR-V on finance, it might be worth going for the Advance as well, and kind of, yeah, retaining some of that value. But I'd say kind of the Sport is still that sweet spot. Now, when it comes to powering the ZR-V, just like the Honda Civic, we got a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine, which is mated to a battery and 2 electric motors, which gives you around 181 brake horsepower and 315 Newton meters of torque, which means that the ZR-V will go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in about 7.9 seconds. So it is actually a bit nippy, but when you have it in sport mode and you put your foot down, it does feel a bit quicker, which is nice. I mean, it doesn't feel Type R quick, but it just feels a bit nippier than what those numbers suggest, so that is a blessing. Now, it's front wheel drive only, and the power goes through an eCVT box. Now, just like the Civic, technically, there's no box there. There's actually no gearbox per se. It's just essentially an ECU which creates some gears as you're driving, so you don't have that traditional horrible CVT whine when you put your foot down. And that's why we have got a couple of flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel to actually, well, go through the gears whilst you're driving. So that is actually a nice thing to come across. And as I mentioned earlier, they're metal. I mean, that feels really nice. And I think the last time we had paddles shifters that were metal in a Honda, yeah, it was an NSX. So as a result, you do have a nice sporty feel to the ZR-V, and when you put your foot down, there we go, we got that nice little change of gear as you put your foot down. So I do really like that. Now, of course, this being a hybrid, when it comes to economy, Honda say I should get around 48.7 mpg on a combined cycle, and that's of course a WLTP cycle. Now, I can't really tell you what I'm getting because I'm driving on different roads and I'm having a little play with the drive modes and everything, and kind of, well, not driving like Miss Daisy. But I have heard some journalists been getting around 50 mpg when they did a couple of drives not too long ago. So in typical kind of Honda fashion, you should be able to get some decent results when it comes to economy in the ZR-V. So that is really nice and impressive. But just like most hybrids out there, it has got this nice way of wanting to drive about in EV mode as much as possible, especially when you got it in eco. But there's a nice transition between the engine and hybrid setup, and it's seamless. You can't feel it going from EV to petrol engine, which is what you want in this kind of car. And I think Honda, just like with the Civic, have done a brilliant job with the ZR-V, where you've got that faux gearbox with the hybrid setup, and everything just, well, works really well. So that is something I do like about the ZR-V, that everything just seems to, yeah, just work really well together. And it does mean that you've got quite a nice, lively car, I should say, when you get going. This definitely doesn't feel like it's designed to be just a big, relaxing family cruiser. You can kind of grab it by the scruff of the neck and chuck it into the corners, and having 181 brake horsepower definitely helps with that. Now, when it comes to the ride and refinement in the ZR-V, it is actually really nice. Now, I am not going to say it's best in class, because the ZR-V has got a bit of a sporty setup to it, in the fact that you've got that power there, you've got the flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel. It has got this kind of slightly sporty edge to it, so as a result, the suspension has got a slight edge on firmness rather than comfort. So at low speed, you can feel some of the bumps and imperfections come into the cabin, but it's not uncomfortable. But what I like is that as you speed up, it does actually settle down. Now again, you tend to actually hear the bumps and imperfections more than feel them, which is a real nice surprise. But I wouldn't say it's the comfiest car in its segment in terms of the way the suspension's been set up. There is that slight firmness there, but it's not uncomfortable. I could easily see myself doing a long journey in the ZR-V and coming out the other end feeling nice and relaxed. So don't think of it as being a like Type R, but you're sat higher up. It is a comfortable SUV, but the suspension has just been set slightly to the firmer side rather than the comfier side. Now, when it comes to the refinement side of the ZR-V, it's not too bad. Now, there is a bit of tyre roar that comes into the cabin and a little bit of wind noise from the wing mirrors and the A-pillar, but that's not really that intrusive. It's more the tyre roar that comes in. But if you get yourself on a nice A road like I'm on here, it actually settles down and it does become a nice, quiet, refined cruiser. Now, because I've got the advanced trim, it does mean I come with a lovely Bose sound system, and I have been listening to my tunes in between filming the little takes, and that's actually a really nice blessing. So that's one bonus, I would say, of going for the advance. But even if you go for the sport, one thing I do like about Hondas is that they do tend to have good stock stereos, so you shouldn't have too many issues with the elegance or the sport. But yeah, it is a nice bonus if you go for the advance and you get that Bose sound system. But yeah, really, in terms of ride and refinement, I've got no real complaints. Yes, there's a little bit of tyre noise, but it settles down quickly. It's a nice, comfortable cruiser. Now, when it comes to the ZR-V's handling, because this is based on the Civic, it should be very good, because I absolutely love how the Civic handles, and I'm talking about the family-friendly Civic, not just the Type R. And yeah, this is living up to expectations. Now, firstly, the steering wheel is of a really lovely size. I love the quality of the leather, and it feels really lovely in my hands. And then there's actually a bit of weight to it as well, just like the Civic, so it does feel like a connection between the steering wheel and the front tyres, which is what you want in an SUV, which Honda is claiming has a bit of sportiness about it. So that's something that you really do want. However, it is light enough, so it does make the ZR-V a doddle to park, but it's just nice that you can actually kind of grab the ZR-V by the scruff of the neck and chuck it into corners, and it will reward you. So that is something I do like about it. Let's bear with me a second. I've got myself stuck behind a road cleaner. There we go. And I got a nice bit of acceleration. It's an eCVT, but it changes gear. I love that. This is a very nippy car, but I do love that it has got a chuckability about it. Oh, there we go. So yeah, sorry, the handling. Yeah, I'm really impressed by it. And if you do chuck it into the corners, yes, there is a little bit of lean and roll, but it's nice and predictable. It's actually something that you would want from this type of car. There's a nice air of predictability about it. Now, yes, it's no Porsche Macan, but it's not that type of car. It's front wheel drive only. But when you combine the handling with the refinement and the ride, you've got yourself a really nice overall package. Honda weren't going for the most comfiest of cars. They were going for one that just had a really lovely kind of sporty sweet spot to it. And I do think they've delivered. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of lean, but it feels nice and composed. No, I do like it. Now, of course, in these types of cars, you have got your drive modes. Now, there are 4 to choose from in the ZR-V. You've got Sport, you've got Normal, you've got Eco, and you've got Snow. And, well, that's one I don't need for today, so let's just keep it in Sport. Now, when you have got it in Sport mode, it does firm up the suspension a little bit, and actually, it takes away a little bit of that lean in the corners. Again, something I do like about it. Now, I'm really impressed with the ZR-V. I think it drives really well. You need to kind of be aware of the fact that this is not going to be the most comfortable car in its class, but it is going to be a fun car in its class. It's going to rival the likes of the Ford Kuga, because Ford tend to be the ones who have a benchmark when it comes to handling, but I would say I really do like the ZR-V's handling. I do love the performance as well. The engine, the hybrid setup with that eCVT no gearbox just works brilliantly. It worked brilliantly in the Civic, it works brilliantly in the ZR-V. So again, hats off to Honda. In terms of economy, well, I can't really tell you right now. I think I'm doing about 45 mpg, and I've been kind of, well, I've not been driving like Miss Daisy. I've been driving with a little bit of exuberance when chucking it into some of the corners, but I'm impressed by that. That's just shy of what Honda claim, and I'm sure I could get more when I get this car for review and I do a proper review on it for you guys. But yeah, just like the Civic, I am hugely impressed by it. There are just 2 little issues that come up. Number 1 is price, and number 2 is practicality. And that's something where an SUV needs to kind of win over its customers. And the fact that we've got a 380 litre boot, which is way off the mark compared to the likes of a Skoda Karoq, does mean that if you're after the practical SUV choice, you're not going to get it from this car. So just be aware of that. But Honda are aiming this car at kind of young, I'd say established families. You know, you don't want a traditional, I don't want to say boring, but you know what, I will say it, boring SUV. Something with a little bit of zip, something a little bit different, but rewards you in terms of driving dynamics as well as the frugality as well. So yeah, those are really just the 2 little niggles. The fact that this is around £40,000 to start off with may put off some buyers, but because you've got that narrow price band between the Elegance and the Advance, it does mean you can get yourself a nice rewarding SUV, which, you know, is going to be dependable for you as well, and should hold its value when you get to the end of your finance contract. So yeah, I actually think the ZR-V is a very good SUV from Honda. It is slightly flawed, but I do like it. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this first drive review of the new, all new Honda ZR-V. Of course, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. Of course, if you've got any comments or questions about the ZR-V, please put them down in the comment section below and I will do my best to answer those questions. Don't know if you